Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Backscatter for sponsoring this episode. Backscatter are a retailer based in Monterey, in California, who do a wide range, or a massive range of underwater photography equipment. And they have, you can order online globally, and so please check them out at backscatter.com, and you can see they've got this huge range of gear. I'm overjoyed, as always, to be joined by Alex. Hi, Alex.
Thank you, Adam. I'm overjoyed to see you too.
I thought
I can cope.
Semi-happy, yeah. Fantastic. So how are you getting on, Alex?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, I've been away in the Red Sea. Really enjoyed that trip. I think for the last, 2 years, as many have, my amount of diving was way down on what I'm used to. Yeah. And I think a good, back-to-back workshop trip with, plenty of hours logged underwater kind of makes me feel a bit more relaxed about life again. So yeah, it's I really, just really enjoyed the trip, and that feeling of just dive.
Yeah.
So yeah, great.
Yeah.
I watched your retro review on Wetpixel Live, which you recorded while I was away. I missed being part of it. But I did agree with everything you said pretty much, so I wouldn't have added much other than saying the same thing. So you didn't need me.
We missed you though, Alex. But I think that, one of the things that I certainly teased out of this is that batteries are not an issue, the wrong word. Batteries are something we really need to consider as underwater photographers. Yeah. And I thought it might be worth, because obviously you've now been shooting your retros back to back, so it would be nice to kind of get your thoughts on how you've managed the battery issue too.
Yeah, I've used them a lot recently, and strangely, although I've had them for a long time, they've not been my main strobes for a while. It took a while for me to sort of get them as my main strobes. I did use them a bit last year, but I think returning to destinations that I really know and like, I think really gave me a chance to get a feel for how strong they were. I've taken them to Socorro and used them with big animals, and last month, and then this month taken them to the Red Sea and shot big schools, big wrecks, big reef scenes, and everything else in between as well. And feel like I really have a handle on their performance now. I think one of the things when you're using them, one of the things I like about the strobes is that you can either make them big with the superchargers and they've got this, phenomenal performance, or you can make them small for your macro trip. And I really like that. It do feel like two strobes in one when they're like that. So I think the issue, though, as you've got to, you mentioned already, but is that when you run them with the superchargers and you're shooting with two strobes, you're dealing with a situation that you have 60 batteries in your strobes at a time. And that's quite a lot of work to manage in terms of charging, in terms of looking after those batteries, being careful you don't put one in the wrong way around as well, which is, is actually quite a common mistake, actually. Because also if you only have one wrong way round in the superchargers, they will actually still come on and work. You just because the batteries are fighting against themselves, you lose all the performance of having the superchargers. But they will actually work through the dive. You just have to wait for them to recycle. But I think the main issue with that 16 batteries is you're basically committing to traveling with 32 AA batteries as a minimum if you want 2 full sets. And that's a lot of charging requirements. And I think that was something that was frustrating me with the retros until I reinvested in my charging infrastructure before the Socorro trip. And since then, I've been absolutely loving using them because I have that was really freed me up, and I'm just really, really happy. So I was really keen to talk about that.
So, I think that's probably historically, so it's worth mentioning, there was a move, probably it's pre-COVID, so it must be 3 or 4 years ago, where towards USB-C, so using a power adapter that basically took power from power source and then put out a USB-C and then that then went to a charge. And I tried it. I have to be honest. I tried it 3 or 4 years ago, and I
It's a
tried it
great
on a
way to
trip.
save weight, in theory, isn't it?
Well, the idea to me, and I thought, well, I could do my laptop off at the same time. You know, there was all sorts of like, okay, this sounds like a really, really good idea. And I must be honest, I was really disappointed with it. So much so that actually I've still got the stuff somewhere in my office, and I haven't used it. So it's really interesting to hear that, you know, these ideas are moving on, and that the technology is getting better, and it's becoming more viable. So yeah, I'm fascinated to hear what you've been using, Alex.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is my AA charging bag. I mean, I'm holding it forward so it looks big, but it's, you know, it's a small like neoprene bag from an airline, and it's got everything I need to charge those 16 batteries. The first thing is the USB hub. This is the power hub that powers everything. It's a 65-watt one, so it's got good output. And this particular one has got 2 USB-Cs, 2 traditional USB-A, whatever it's called, the old type of USB. You can get all 4 USB-Cs, but actually I was happy with this mix just because I don't just use it for charging batteries. And I think, like you already said, I can charge my MacBook Pro off this with it plugged straight in. I can charge my iPhone, my iPad, my headphones, everything off this. So on a lot of trips, I'll carry this in my hand luggage and use it to power my laptop on the plane or, the airport, charge all my items up. It's got 4 great sockets for that. And then on the trip, it gets relegated to charging AA's again. And, it's tiny. It's not heavy at all. And it's a fantastic thing. This particular one I bought from Amazon, of all places. And it's made by a company called Covol, and it's a 65-watt one. And this one was, when I got it, was £27.
Wow.
Not a lot of money at all.
No.
Really, really good. And I'm really happy. I've actually got 2 of them now. They're so handy. I actually take now one for the battery chargers, and I actually take a second one as my main laptop power source for the whole trip.
Wow.
And I keep it, and it charges all my phones and everything like that. On the trip. The chargers I'm using, I spoke to Retro about this, and I said, I think it's really important that because this need to charge 16 batteries all the time is a big issue with the flash guns, that you really need to have a recommendation out there. And Oscar from Retro immediately said to me, well, our recommendation is simple: don't buy one big battery charger, buy 4 really good 4-socket battery ones.
So ones,
Because that way you've got some redundancy. If you rely on a 16 or an 8 charger and it goes down, it's not a problem. If one of these goes down, you've still got 3 chargers. But I have to say that the ones I've bought are absolutely rock solid. They're fast chargers, which I think is ultimately what I want as an underwater photographer. I know people argue, yes, if you have a slow charger, it keeps your batteries in better condition. Have one of those at home, condition them after the trip.
Exactly.
On the trip, I want my batteries ready to go. These things work really well. Outside in Egypt, we were charging them. It was quite hot outside. I was charging them obviously outside on the liverboard from a safety point of view, as people do on boats. And they were great. They've got good air ventilation. The batteries are nicely exposed. The batteries don't get crazy hot despite the fast charging time. And I would always be able to recharge a set of batteries over the course of a dive. So one set would come out, the other set would always be ready by the end of that dive. They would nearly always be ready by the end of the surface interval, before the dive. So, if you only had one set, you could pretty much stay on top of them with these. I'm just going to read. It's called, the one I use is called Infrapower, and I was so happy with them. I told you about them. And now we've both got them. We can tell everyone how to run out of stock when everyone's
That's right. Yeah.
And these are great. Another really
good
one is the EBL one, and these are both USB-C and USB-A, so you can use them with either plug. These are, I don't know, I can't remember the specs of them, but they charge nice and fast, which is what you want. And then,
I'm going to interrupt for a minute. I think this is a really the having the four slot chargers. So what the mistake I made with the Retros on my Red Sea trips was that I took one 8-slot charger. And A, I didn't have enough charging capacity. That was the first point. But B, if that had gone down, I'd have been in a real trouble. Whereas, having 4, it's not a whole lot bigger than my 1/8 slot. And, if I lose a charger, then I'm still functioning.
And that's basically what I'm taking.
Yeah.
It fits in my hand. It weighs very little.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a really nice solution,
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the other thing is important is with the USB. I'm not that techie, but I'm aware that the USB cables you need to get. Well, my understanding is you need to have charging USB-C cables to get the high capacity running from the hub to the chargers.
Yeah.
So, because
I
you can
believe
get
that's the
USB
case.
cables which are just for connectivity, which will charge a bit, and then you can
Yeah.
get ones that can really take a decent current down them. But you
Yeah.
don't usually need long ones, so I have these ones which are probably 50 centimeter ones.
Yeah.
And actually, I keep them tied up because the batteries are never very far. The chargers are never very far away from the hub anyway.
Yeah, it's a good
Mm.
point. So make sure that your cables are capable of carrying
Yeah.
the charging current. Yeah,
And they're all
or
in
the
there
current
as
for
well. It's
charge.
just it's just a nice, neat little
Yeah.
bag,
Yeah.
which carries everything. And I have to say that I found that really transformative.
Yeah.
And the other thing I like about these InfoPower ones, they're not plugged in now, so you can't see, but they have got a power indicator for each flash, each
Yeah.
battery. They
Yeah.
beep when the battery's in, right? So when you're tired
That's
at the end
good.
of the diving and you're pushing them in, you
Yeah.
listen for your beep, 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 and you know your batteries are in the right way round,
Yeah.
connected, happily charging. I've never had a charging failure issue. On my
Yeah.
old chargers, I used to sometimes get one battery and the charger would be flashing after a while saying, can't charge this one.
Yeah.
This has charged everything perfectly through a lot of dives now. And I'm
Yeah.
just really, really happy with that setup at the moment.
I think that the other thing we probably should talk about is batteries themselves, because I think I think one of the problems that we bump into, there we are.
I'm just here because
Yeah. I mean, I think typically most underwater photographers, I think, probably choose the Eneloop batteries. I mean, there are other brands out there, but they seem to be fairly universally recognised and recommended by most of the flash manufacturers. So that's a. But I think we should also recognise that they have a limited life. Any rechargeable battery does, and it always strikes me as a bit of a false economy when you spend a lot of money, $1,000 on a flash, and then don't want to invest $20 or $30 in a set of batteries. So I think having some form of recycling scheme whereby you're removing the older batteries in your stock and replacing with newer batteries periodically, and I mean it depends on how much you use them, so obviously so on and so forth, how you do that. But having some kind of system that allows you to make sure that you are replacing the older batteries with new ones, I think is a really important factor as well. I think old batteries definitely don't work as well as new ones. So
absolutely. And a friend of mine who comes on trips with me sometimes, he actually before every major trip buys new sets of batteries, and then at the end of that trip, if he's got a couple of small trips afterwards, he might hang on to them. But if his next trip is another big major trip in 4 months' time, he'll always ask the local dive staff, do you need some really good quality rechargeables? And to be honest, local dive staffs living in remote areas love a brand new, an almost new set of Eneloops, and that's a great use for them. One other thing I was going to say about the Eneloops is that when you are dealing with 16 batteries going in and out of your strobes all the time, and this is just for retro users really, it's really good to be able to differentiate between the two sets. So you can put stickers on them. You can put little color-coded stickers. One of the problems with the color-coded stickers, if you put big stickers on them, they don't fit that well inside the strobes. I've got my sets marked just with a paint pen. So one set has got a white squiggle on it. One set doesn't. And that way, when you're trying to change, 16 batteries, and particularly for me, people are always talking to me, asking me advice, telling me about problems, and I'm not always concentrating that much on my gear. It's really important that you're putting the fresh ones in, and you're taking
the charged ones.
I did several times during the trip. Take one set out, put them on the table. Someone talks to me, I then pick them back up and put them straight back in. Obviously, the battery test picks that up, and the charger tells me also if they're full or empty. But it's really good to have them marked, have the two sets marked differently.
You're going to accuse me of being a geek. It's probably a reasonable criticism, but what I do is I have several paint pens. So I buy Eneloops in packs of 8, 8 at a time, and then each one gets a unique color, and then I color code those. That's my recycling technique. So after a while, I decide, right, the red ones are 2 years old. I get rid of them, and I buy a new set of red ones.
I think that's really good. And I think the paint pens are better than stickers because it stops. The stickers can jam them into the things, and I think also putting like stickers on the outside might also not help with the heat dissipation
It's
when
not
they're
a
getting
dis.
hot when they're
Yeah,
charging. So, and not a
yeah,
big deal, but I
yeah,
think the pens are a really good solution. I really like that solution. I'm going to copy that one off you, Adam.
yeah, yeah. And
Also,
any minute now, I'll have a spreadsheet too. But
well, yeah, that is going too far. Um, and it's also good because it also, when particularly like when I've been on Liverpool with 20 other photographers, the vast majority of whom were using, retro
and
strobes with
batteries.
superchargers. There's a lot of end loops on board,
Yeah, there
and
is.
it's
Yeah.
good to know which ones are yours.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the additional thing, yeah, generally. And and again, back to what you were saying, which set is doing which at any one time.
Mm,
I'm charging red and green, and white and yellow
mm.
are in the strobes, and well, yeah, it works in my head.
The other thing, just briefly on another good reason for having these 4-pot chargers, not only are they great, is that one of the things I really like about the retro is I don't always use the superchargers. So my last 2 trips have been big animals, big scene stuff,
Yep.
big shots. I really want the superchargers on. Um, if I go back to UK diving, I never use the superchargers. I don't need the
Yep.
power, I don't need the recycle time. I'm running on much lower powers, and
Yep.
then I just take 2 of these chargers with me.
Yeah.
I don't need to take, whereas if I had a big 16 hole or a big 8 hole, I'd be stuck taking that great big charger when I don't need it. So yeah, it also allows me to trim my gear down. And that, I think, I know it sounds a really boring topic, but it actually has really transformed my enjoyment of using the retros.
Yeah.
Because, there are advantages in AA, but, I think the retros would be easier to live with if they had a great big battery pack that you just slotted in and it was one battery you were changing, instead of 2 batteries, you were changing one for each instead of 16 every time.
Yep.
But, with this system, I have to say I've been very happy.
I think there was one other comment that I know we made in passing, Alex, and I think this is very specific to retros. So really, probably it's a part of this discussion, but isn't really. I think one of the other things that we need to do regarding batteries is part of our pre-dive check should be to check the battery status using retro's own built-in battery check function. Because up until now, we tend to just stick them in and pull the trigger, it flashes, right, it's fixed.
Full because you just taken them off a charger.
Yeah, and you pull the trigger and it's fixed. But there's the issue that you can get them in the wrong way around, and that reduces the performance significantly, and that does show up on the battery check.
Yeah.
So I think we should now incorporate that into our pre-dive checking.
Yeah, definitely that's a mistake I made because I've taken them off a charger. My charger shows me they're full on the little bar graphs on the charger. I put them in the strobes. I turn the strobes on, take a test shot. I think I'm ready to go. But actually, just taking a moment to turn it on, do the battery check, and then go and do your test shot. It checks that they're not just charged; they're in the right way around.
Yep.
Yeah, very good advice, Adam.
I think that's something we should probably add to the checklist.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you, Alex. I think that's been a really useful discussion about a relatively mundane but very, very important subject. Actually.
Yeah. And I think particularly with an increasing number of serious photographers using retros, and certainly the last 3 trips I've done, they by far amongst the serious shooters that tend to come on those trips, by far the most popular strobes. Accounting for 70-80% on each trip.
Yep. So definitely good advice. Thank you, Alex. And I'd like to thank Backscatter again very much for supporting this episode. And I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to add any comments or possibly your own workflow on how you deal with your batteries. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.